Hello and welcome back to another Gloo tutorial. In this video we're going to look at the powerful Dynamic Composer Kit extension where we can store data into variables, we can store numbers for calculations and even CSS to speed up your workflow. So let's get into it. Dynamic Composer Kit gives you the ability, much like PHP, where you're able to create variables and store your data. The kit also allows us to perform calculation. We can store CSS information and use that data wherever we need it. We can also store numbers and use them as calculations. So as you can see, I've already enabled Dynamic Composer Kit. So if we jump over to the page that I've already created, and let's get started. So now that we're on our template, we're going to add some information to some of these key areas. We've got a title that's a car for sale, have an overview section, a specification section and a fun fact area. What we're going to do is we're going to use and store some information to dynamically change this information on the main title. We're going to add a string and some subtext to the overview, and then we're going to use the same data but in a different way for specification, and then we're going to do some calculation within the fun fact area. So let's first go and explore what the Dynamic Composer widget does and some of the options that are available to us. So let's jump over and take a look and find the Dynamic Composer widget. If we drag this into view, what we can see now is that within the widget we have a couple of options for variable name and variable value. The variable name is something that we uniquely identify the variable by, and then we can use that within the composer field to pull back that information. And then of course the variable value. Now this can be done in two ways. You can either set a static value by simply typing in a value into the box and we can pull that information back, or we can interact with the dynamic tag so we can pull things back like any of these dynamic fields here. And of course, if you had meta fields within a page or a post type, we can pull this information back and use that value to output onto the page. And what you can actually do is add multiple variables. So we can have, name a variable here, a variable here, and a variable here, each with their own unique information stored. So we can use that information and combine these together to pull back whatever information that we want to display on the page. So with that being said, we now have the type. The first option is HTML markup, and then you can get into calculations. So again, we can store some information, and then we can output this number, and we can do some simple or complex math. And this is all handled within the Composer box. There is a final part to the Dynamic Composer Kit. Before we go ahead and start updating the page, we now have in the Advanced tab Dynamic CSS Composer. So this does exactly the same thing, but this time we can store CSS. So for example, if you had a hex code, a color code stored in a meta value, or if you wanted to fetch some of the global variables set within Elementor, so typefaces, like font families or colors, any of those options can be used in combination with one of the other extensions from Gloo, and we can pull that information back and actually use this within the string wherever you want by using the variable name. So let's go ahead and jump back to adding some information to these areas that we discussed earlier. We've got a Dynamic Composer widget. We've just got some standard headings here, but what we're going to do is fetch some information from some meta fields. Then we're going to create a string and insert and inject some of the data from the meta fields into the string or the sentence. Then we're going to do a list of spec and then just a fun fact with some calculations. So let's go ahead and remove our variables that we created here, and let's begin by setting the HTML markup option and remove this information from the box here. What we're going to do is write a sentence essentially, and we're going to inject some information in here. So let's go ahead and write the sentence first. So what we're going to do is actually replace some of this information with our variables. So as you can see, this is just a set string, and if this was another car or another page, of course still say we have a Ferrari F40 in a stunning red color, which is not what we want. So what we're going to do is fetch some information from some meta fields that I created before, and we're going to inject it in here. So let's go ahead and do that now. So if we do car make as our first variable, and if we go down to our custom fields, so I created some meta fields using Jet Engine. Of course you can use other methods of doing this. So if we go ahead and select our car make, and what we're going to do is actually use this variable name car make and replace Ferrari with car make. Of course, nothing has changed. So let's go ahead and create another item. So let's go and fetch another field. So what we're going to do now is take the model. So we're going to do car model, and again we're going to use our variable to replace F40. As you can see, we have a Ferrari F40 in a stunning red color. Last part is we're going to change the color from our meta field. So let's do a custom field, and we're going to do color, and we're going to do car color. What we're going to do is change the red color here, but what you may notice is we've got the Rosso Corsa, because that's the official color for the red Ferrari. So let's go ahead and update that now. And if we go ahead and take a look at that on the front page, as you can see, it's outputting those variables for us. So we don't need to have a static string. So again, if we had another manufacturer or make of car, this information would fetch that information from the meta fields that we set and replace those pieces of information. So the next step is, what we're going to do is create a spec list underneath specification. So let's go ahead and jump into the template. And as you can see, we've already got our dynamic composer widget with these variables set. So instead of writing them all over again, let's simply duplicate, move down to specification, then we can just add the price to this and also adjust what the output is by using some HTML in the composer field. So let's first of all remove this, and if we add a new variable of car price, and if we fetch the field that we need, so let's go ahead and take the price, and this time we're going to just do things slightly differently. We're going to add some, in the advanced tab, we're going to add some before text. We're going to do price, and we're going to add a $sign. Do the same for these other fields. So we've got the color, we're going to do advanced color, and we're going to do the same for model, and finally for make. So once we've done this, what we're going to do is output this information in a list. So if we do some very basic HTML, so ul, li, and if we do car make, close this off, and if we just replicate these down and then alter the variable names, so let's go ahead and do that now. So as you can see in the view, it's already started outputting this information. So if we do car make, car model, car color, and then finally car price. So as you can see, we've got the specification using pretty much exactly the same set of information from the overview, but of course we've laid it out slightly differently. And as you can see, the composer field can accept HTML, so we can display this information how we want to. There we go. So we've got make, model, color, and price. Now the final part of this is we're going to go into the fun fact, and we're going to start introducing some calculations. We're going to take the price of the current market value, and then we're going to compare that with the original price, which I've set a value in a meta field, and then we're just going to look at how that compares from the original value of the vehicle to today's current market to show you a basic calculation. So if we go ahead and search for the dynamic composer widget, and we place that in the fun fact area, what we're going to do is fetch two meta fields. We're going to fetch the price that we've already used, and then also another field which is original price. So I've got two values set. What we're going to do is explore some of the calculation options that we have, what we can do with this, and how we can output some basic or complex math. In our case, we're just going to take two values, and then we're just going to output this within a string and show you what fun we can have with this. So let's go ahead and set our variables. So the first variable we're going to make is our car price. And the field that we're going to get is the car price that we used before. So we've got our price here. And then again, we're going to just copy this down, and we're going to do something very similar, but this time we're going to do car original price, so car O price. And let's just make sure that we set this to the original price. Let's take a look at some of these fields here. So we've set this type to calculations as opposed to HTML markup. And what this does is it turns the composer field into a way or a system of adding or subtracting, multiplying or dividing any of your variables with each other. As you can see, we've set some examples here of how this works. But of course, we've got some other information that we can supply. So we've got before text, after text, thousand separator, and then decimal place. So let's go ahead and output our values first of all. So let's go and place in car price and our car price. So as you can see in the display, we've got these two values here. Now what I want to do is deduct one from the other. So it's going to be a simple case of deducting this variable from this variable. So let's go ahead and update that and see what this looks like. So as you can see, that is the correct value, but we can smarten this up slightly because it's quite difficult to read. So what we're going to do is add the thousand separator. And of course you can put in whatever separator you want. In our case, it's going to be a comma. So let's go ahead and quickly take a look. Now this is becoming a lot neater now. So what we're going to do now is add some text around this calculation. So because it's a fun fact, let's just put some information here relative to what this information means. So the text that we're going to place in here is the car is now worth this much more than it was in 1987. Wow. So as you can see, when we output this, the fun fact is the car is now worth $300,000 more now than it was in 1987. Okay, so before we move over to the CSS Composer Kit, I just want to show you that you can have a little bit more fun with math, and it doesn't have to be just some basic subtraction, multiplication, and so on. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at the dynamic composer widget once more. Let's set this to calculations. And instead of using a variable, we're just going to set some static values here and just show you that, you know, we're not limited to these basic formulas here. So what we're going to do is in parentheses, we're going to do 180 divide 9, and then let's multiply by that by 23. So we hit update. And if we take a look at the front end, as you can see, it's worked out the math. Now I just wanted to show you that before we moved over to the CSS Composer Kit, just to show you that you're not absolutely limited to basic formulas. So let's go ahead and jump over to CSS and show you how we can speed up your workflow. So the final part is showing you the Composer CSS Kit. So let's go ahead and take a look at that and where to find it and how to use it. So we're going to begin by adding a simple heading widget, and we're going to head over to Advanced. You'll find the Dynamic CSS Composer Kit located here. Now, all you need to do is enable this. So the format of this is exactly the same, where we set a variable name and a value. Then all we do is simply assign this to the CSS as to where we want this to show and display. So what we're going to do is just select a word from this text here and set it to bold. And then what we're going to do here is set two variables. We're going to set one for a color, then we're going to set one for font family. But the way that we're going to do this is in conjunction with another of Gloo's extension. Let's take a look at that now. It's the Global's dynamic tag extension. What this allows us to do is access the global colors and the global fonts that we set within Elementor. So let's go ahead and take a look at that now. So what we're going to do is set a variable name to font color, and we're going to access and fetch a global color. So underneath global dynamic tags, now that's enabled, we can access any of our global colors here. If we set this to Gloo Blue, which is one of our colors that we've created, and then if we set another variable, which is going to be font family, and then we're going to access global fonts again. And then what we're going to do is set the style to our secondary font because this is distinctive. So as you can see, we've got some more options. We've got responsive, so we can set this to display on certain views. We've got a return value, which is going to be font family, but of course you can make this the size, weight, line height, or letter spacing. And the fallback family is any font that you want to set to fallback if the browser cannot render the font that you are trying to display. So let's leave this for default at the moment. So what we're going to do is target this widget, which is selector, specifically the B, the bold element. And what we're going to do is do font family, and we're going to set this to our font family variable, and then equally we're going to do color, and then we're just going to do font color. So if we go ahead and save that now, so as you can see, the piece of text that we targeted is now in our Gloo blue and the global font that we set it to be. So as you can see, that was really straightforward. What we're going to do now is just play around with, so we're going to target the title, and we're actually going to fetch some information from a meta field. If we go to Dynamic CSS Composer, enable this, we're going to do font color again. We can add some real personality to these car pages. So for the Ferrari, we can really sort of stylize it around the Ferrari red. So if we were to take our Dynamic Composer widget for the title and head over to enable Dynamic CSS, what we can do is do font color for the variable name. And this time what we're going to do is tap into a custom field and use some metadata to style the color. So what I've actually done is I've set a color hex code within a meta field for the Ferrari. And then what we're going to do is do select a div, because it's a div within this particular Elementor selector. And then we're going to set the color to our font color. And then that will output the Ferrari F40 for sale in the red. Now what we can do is also target the border, for instance, around this box. So again, if we select this inner section, go to Advanced, Dynamic CSS Composer, if we create a variable called border color, and again if we tap into the same custom field and do color code, now if we do selector, border color, and then again if we do border color, if we hit update, if we go ahead and take a look at the template, as you can see, that's changed it to the Ferrari red color that we set within the meta field. So as you can probably imagine, if you wanted to really stylize or personalize these pages for templates and make them really unique, you have full control over that within your meta fields within WordPress, rather than having to set this each and every time. So thank you again for watching this video. I hope to see you in the next one. Take care and see you soon. Bye bye for now.